The weight of silence. Sarah Chen's hand trembled as she gripped the steering wheel, watching through the rearview mirror as her daughter Emma traced invisible patterns on the foggy window. 6 years of silence. 6 years of specialists, therapies, and unanswered prayers. 6 years of wondering if she'd ever hear her little girl's voice again. The doctors had a name for it: selective mutism following trauma, but labels didn't make the silence any easier to bear. Sarah had built an empire, negotiated billion-dollar deals, commanded boardrooms full of skeptical executives, yet she was powerless before the one challenge that truly mattered. Every night she'd tuck Emma into bed and whisper the same plea into the darkness. "Please, baby, just one word. Just one." The playground stretched before them now, filled with the chaotic symphony of childhood, laughter, shrieks, the rhythmic creak of swings cutting through autumn air. Sarah had driven 40 minutes to find this place, away from their upscale neighborhood, where pitying glances followed them like shadows. Here no one knew she was the CEO of Chen Technologies. Here she was just another tired mother hoping for a miracle. That logic told her would never come. Emma slipped her small hand into Sarah's and they walked toward the swings. At least her daughter still smiled, still found joy in the silent world she'd retreated into after that terrible night when the drunk driver had taken her father. Sarah had survived the crash with broken ribs and a shattered collarbone. Emma had emerged without a scratch on her body but had never spoken again. The swing set was occupied except for one seat beside a man pushing a boy who couldn't have been more than 7. The child's laughter rang out pure and unself-conscious, and Sarah felt the familiar pang of envy mixed with joy for someone else's happiness. She guided Emma to the empty swing, trying not to notice how the man politely nodded before returning his attention to his son.
"Higher, Dad, higher!"
the boy called out, his voice full of fearless delight. Sarah began pushing Emma gently, finding the rhythm that her daughter preferred. Not too high, never too fast. Emma's small hands gripped the chains, and Sarah could see the hint of a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. These moments were everything now, these tiny glimmers of happiness that proved her daughter was still in there, still capable of joy, even if she couldn't express it in words. "Careful, Marcus," the man called as his son jumped from the swing mid-arc, landing in a crouch before popping up with his arms raised in triumph. "Did you see, Dad? Did you see?" Marcus bounded over to his father, practically vibrating with pride. "I saw, buddy." "Very impressive." The man ruffled his son's hair, and Sarah noticed the worn patches on his jacket, the scuffed work boots that had seen better days. His hands bore the calluses of manual labor, but they were gentle as they steadied his son. "But maybe let's keep our feet on the ground until we get home, okay?" Marcus noticed Emma then, his eyes bright with the curiosity of a child unburdened by adult caution. "Hi, I'm Marcus. What's your name?" Sarah's chest tightened. She opened her mouth to answer for Emma, as she always did, but the man caught her eye and gave an almost imperceptible shake of his head. Something in his expression stopped her. Not pity, but understanding. Marcus didn't seem bothered by Emma's silence. "Want to see something cool?" He pulled a small, worn wooden carving from his pocket, a bird with wings spread mid-flight. "My dad made this. He makes all kinds of stuff. He's teaching me, but I'm not very good yet, see?" He showed Emma a lopsided star carved into the bird's base. "I did that part." Emma's eyes widened, and she leaned forward on the swing, genuinely interested. She reached out tentatively, and Marcus placed the carving in her palm with the solemnity of someone sharing treasure. "Marcus has a gift for knowing when someone needs a friend," the man said quietly to Sarah. "I'm Daniel, by the way. Daniel Foster. Sarah Chen." She watched their children with a mixture of hope and fear. "Your son is very kind." "He's had to be." Daniel's voice carried a weight that spoke of his own stories, his own losses. "We've had our share of hard times. Teaches you what matters." They fell into comfortable silence, watching as Marcus showed Emma how to hold the carving up to the light, making shadow birds dance on the ground. Emma's shoulders had relaxed in a way Sarah rarely saw anymore. Her daughter was present, engaged, almost glowing. "She doesn't speak," Sarah found herself saying, the words escaping before she could stop them. She rarely volunteered this information, too tired of the questions and advice that inevitably followed. But something about Daniel's quiet presence felt safe. "I figured," Daniel said simply, without the awkwardness or forced sympathy she usually encountered. Marcus was like that for a while, after his mom passed. 14 months without a word. Sarah turned to look at him fully, and Daniel met her gaze with eyes that understood grief intimately. "What happened? How did he—" "I wish I could tell you. I did something brilliant, or found the right therapist, or said the magic words." Daniel watched his son help Emma down from the swing, guiding her toward the sandbox. "Truth is, he spoke when he was ready, when he felt safe enough, when the world proved to him that it was worth engaging with again." 14 months, Sarah whispered. "It's been 6 years for Emma." "Then she's carrying something heavier than Marcus was," Daniel said gently. "But kids are stronger than we think, and more patient. They're waiting for us to catch up, to create the world where their voice matters." In the sandbox, Marcus was showing Emma how to build a proper sandcastle, narrating his process with the enthusiasm of a born teacher. "You got to get the sand wet first, see? Then it sticks together better. Here, I'll help." Emma was nodding, following his instructions, her small hands mimicking his movements. Sarah watched, barely breathing, afraid to disturb whatever magic was unfolding. "My daughter used to love castles," Sarah said softly. "Before. She'd spend hours building elaborate kingdoms, giving voices to all the royal residents, different accents, different personalities. She was so creative, so vibrant." "She still is," Daniel said. "You can see it in her eyes, in how carefully she's placing those shells on the tower Marcus made." He was right. Emma was arranging shells in a spiral pattern, creating something beautiful without uttering a sound. Her creativity hadn't died. It had just found different channels. "I should get back to work," Sarah said, though she made no move to leave. "I've got a conference call at 3. "On a Saturday?" Daniel's eyebrow raised slightly. "When you run a company, there's no such thing as weekends." The words came out more defensive than she intended. "When you're raising a kid, there's no such thing as later," Daniel countered, but his tone was gentle. "Trust me, I learned that the hard way. I was working 2 jobs when Lily got sick, trying to provide everything. Missed her last good months because I was convinced I was doing the right thing." Sarah felt the rebuke land softly but firmly in her chest. How many conference calls had she taken while Emma played silently nearby? How many times had she told herself she was building a future for them both, when really she was hiding from a present she didn't know how to fix? A sharp cry interrupted her thoughts. Marcus had fallen, scraping his knee on a buried stone in the sandbox. Tears streamed down his face as Daniel hurried over. But before he could reach his son, something extraordinary happened. Emma stood up, walked directly to Marcus, and gently took his hand. She looked at his scraped knee with the serious expression of someone assessing an injury, then looked into his tear-filled eyes. And then, in a voice so soft Sarah almost thought she'd imagined it, Emma spoke. "You're brave." 2 words, just 2 words in a voice rusty with disuse, barely louder than a whisper. But they rang through the playground like cathedral bells. Marcus stopped crying, staring at Emma with wide eyes. Daniel froze mid-step, and Sarah felt her knees buckle, catching herself against the swing set. "Did you—" Daniel looked at Sarah, then back at Emma. Emma was still holding Marcus's hand, and now she did something else she hadn't done in 6 years. She smiled, not the small, tentative smiles Sarah had learned to treasure, but a full, radiant smile that transformed her entire face. "You helped me build the castle," Emma continued, her voice growing slightly stronger. "Now I help you." Sarah couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Tears streamed down her face as she watched her daughter, her silent, withdrawn daughter, comfort someone else's child with words, with her voice, with the compassion that had been locked inside her for so long. Marcus wiped his eyes, managed a wobbly smile. "Thanks, it doesn't hurt as much now." "My daddy died," Emma said quietly, still holding Marcus's hand. "I was scared to talk because I thought if I said it out loud, it would be more real. But you told me your mommy died, and you still talk. You're still happy sometimes." I miss her every day, Marcus said with the simple honesty of children. But my dad says she'd want me to still have adventures. Daniel had tears in his own eyes now, and when he looked at Sarah, she saw reflected there every emotion storming through her own heart: wonder, gratitude, the peculiar grief of knowing your child has suffered, and the profound joy of watching them heal. Emma finally turned to her mother, and Sarah dropped to her knees in the sand, opening her arms. Emma ran to her, and Sarah held her daughter like she might disappear, like the moment might shatter into dream. "Mommy," Emma whispered against her shoulder. "I'm sorry I was quiet for so long." "Oh, baby. Oh, my sweet baby." Sarah couldn't form coherent words through her sobs. "You have nothing to be sorry for, nothing." "I just needed to remember how to be brave," Emma said. "Marcus reminded me." Sarah looked up at Daniel and Marcus, this single father and his resilient son who had wandered into their lives by chance. Or perhaps by something more than chance. Marcus was beaming, proud of his role in this miracle. Daniel was trying to maintain composure, but his hand kept swiping at his eyes. "Thank you," Sarah managed to say. "I don't know how to thank you." "You just did," Daniel said. "Some people come into our lives right when we need them. And sometimes we come into theirs right when they need us." They stayed at the playground until the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Marcus and Emma built 3 more castles, with Emma narrating their defenses and royal inhabitants in a voice that grew stronger with each sentence. Sarah sat beside Daniel on the bench, watching their children play, occasionally catching his eye and sharing a smile of mutual understanding. "Would you maybe want to come back next Saturday?" Daniel asked as they finally prepared to leave. Marcus hasn't stopped talking about his new friend. Emma tugged on Sarah's sleeve, her eyes bright and pleading. "Can we, Mommy, please?" Sarah felt something shift in her chest, some weight she'd been carrying for 6 years, finally beginning to lift. "Yes," she said, looking at her daughter's hopeful face, then at Daniel's kind eyes, then at Marcus waving enthusiastically. "Yes, we'll be here." As they drove home, Emma chattered from the back seat, telling Sarah about the castles, about Marcus's wooden bird, about how the sand felt between her fingers. Sarah listened to every word like a symphony, occasionally reaching back to squeeze her daughter's hand, tears of joy still fresh on her cheeks. She'd spent 6 years searching for the cure, the breakthrough, the magic solution that would bring her daughter back. But healing, she realized now, didn't come from expensive therapists or CEO resources or willpower alone. It came from connection, from a boy who shared his treasure without expecting anything in return, from a father who understood grief well enough to let it breathe, from a playground where 2 broken families found each other and, in finding each other, began to discover they weren't as broken as they'd believed. That night, Sarah tucked Emma into bed and waited for her daughter to whisper, as she always did, "Good night, Mommy," and Emma did. But this time she added something new. "I love you, and I think I'm going to be okay now." Sarah kissed her daughter's forehead, smoothed her hair and whispered back, "I think we both are, sweetheart. I think we both are."